Hey gang, what's up? Welcome back here to another episode of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys swinging by and checking out the video today. I'm always grateful for that. And guys, today, like I said in the video, we're going to be talking about the storm clouds gathering over the future of professional fishing. This is sort of going to be a wide-ranging conversation. I want to get into a lot of different aspects of this. I want to hear you guys' opinion at the end of it too. And this is not, everybody, anytime I do a video like this, I get a bunch of comments, oh, Randy, just being negative again, that's all it is. I'm unsubscribing because you're all negative. Guys, I love professional fishing. I love the sport of bass fishing, and I am concerned about the future of it. And when I do stuff like this, it's to bring awareness to the challenges we have to the sport and trying to circumvent the problems we have so we don't, get it where it's too late down the road. And I think far too often, the sport in general, especially the industry, they tend to have this unicorn and rainbow Pollyanna view that everything's great, everything's awesome in the sport, there's nothing wrong with anything that's going on. And they got their head in the sand about a bunch of different stuff that I want to talk about today as somebody that loves the sport and is super concerned about it. So we're going to get into that in detail today. Also, guys, just a big thank you out there to everybody that has been subscribing here to Intuitive Angling over the past couple of weeks. We've picked up quite a few new subscribers, and thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. Also appreciate everybody that's been stepping up and using my tackle warehouse and my other links I put in the description to support the channel, because if it wasn't for you guys doing that, I wouldn't be doing these videos. So thank you very much for that. Okay, guys, I want to get into this. Now, this is going to be something I've spent a ton of time thinking about, for many, many years. And one of the things about fishing you're going to find out is back in the day, everybody was always wondering, it's like, why can't bass fishing get to be like NASCAR or professional golf or professional football or anything like that? It's like, what is keeping us back from it? Because we have more people, there's more participants in the sport of fishing than there is any other sport in the United States. People spend more money fishing than any other sport in the United States. So that right there, why isn't professional fishing more popular and well known than it is? And it's not at all. It's like we have not taken advantage of those statistical abnormalities compared to other sports out there to elevate the sport to the place that it needs to be. And I'm going to get into why that is and why there are some major storm clouds hanging over as a result of that. Now, in my opinion, I'm going to start slow on this, and I'm going to start, how we got to this point and why I say there's so much danger to the sport right now, the future of it. But anyway, things are too complicated now. Back when Bassmaster was at the top of their game, I consider the period of about 1985 to 1995, where Bassmaster was at the top of their game as far as its place within the sport. And they were positioned during that time to set professional fishing up to the point where it could be elevated as a true professional sport in this country. But it never happened for several different reasons. Number one, I think there was always some type of it's a business, and as a business, it's a for-profit business. And when you have a for-profit business, a lot of times some of the higher ideals, like trying to elevate the sport and trying to make the sport better for, the competitors and people on down the road, that sometimes takes a back burner to profit margins. I think that's just the reality of any for-profit business out there. But the thing that really hurt professional fishing to get us to the point where we're at right now was the creation of the FLW in 1996. Now, I'll say something about FLW. I had a great career with them. I made a lot of money with them. I had a lot of good opportunities. They brought a lot of the non-endemic companies into the sport that never existed before. They did do some good things. But in the bigger picture, this was over a period of about 10 years where FLW did this for the sport. But in the bigger picture of the entire, the philosophy of trying to create professional bass fishing as a top tier sport, that did a lot of damage to the sport, because what it did is it segmented the sport of bass fishing. It's like it took away some of the credibility of Bassmaster as the definition of professional fishing, and when FLW come into fruition, that was that water was muddied. You didn't really know. It's like people on the FLW Tour called themselves pros. People on the Bassmaster circuit call themselves pros. What is a pro? It's like there's no clear-cut definition, because in any other sport, Major League Baseball, the NFL, the PGA, Professional Bowlers Tour, any of that type of stuff, there's one league, guys, that identifies you as a professional athlete. It's not segmented all over the place. And with the creation of FLW in 1996, that segmentation caused a split in the sport that tremendously weakened it. And it continued over the coming years, and now it's worse than it's ever been, because there's so many different professional circuits out there. There's so many different circuits of anglers. There's so many different tournament fishermen out there. It's like we've created a monster, and nobody has any type of a clear-cut identification on what a professional angler is in professional bass fishing. Now, the case can be made that it is Bassmaster, because the Bassmaster has the Bassmasters Classic. I do agree with that to an extent, and the problem that we've had with that is that ever since all these other tournament circuits have come around, it has taken away that mystique and the prestige of the Bassmasters Classic. The Bassmasters Classic does not have the same prestige now as it did back in the 70s, 80s, and mid-90s. It simply doesn't, because there's so many other tournaments out there. You've got the FLW Cup that was giving away $1 million for first place in their championship, and all that did was help diminish the Bassmaster brand name in the public's and the sponsors and the media's eyes with that. Okay, that's sort of the reality. Now, here's the problem we have with what I'm saying about there's being dark clouds on the horizon of professional fishing. This is what it is. Number one, and there's quite a bit of different stuff the challenges right here that we're going to have, but number one is the money part of it. It's like professional bass fishing is pricing itself out of the realm of the average American citizen out there. It's truly, at this point, an elitist sport. It's like, if you go, like right now, if you tried to fish the Bassmaster Elite Series, or, MLF Bass Pro Tour, all that type of stuff, it's going to take you $100,000 investment to do that. It's going to take you $100,000 for 1 year before you make a cast. That's not including your truck payment, your mortgage payment at home, your boat payment, your tackle, your insurance, your food at home, taking care of your kids. That's $100,000 of discretionary income that you have to have before you even make a cast. Now, once you do that, you have truly created an elitist sport, which exists in this country today, that did not exist back when bass was at the top of their game in 1986. Here's what I'm going to tell you about that. I'm going to give you my situation to tell you the differences. I started professional fishing, the first year on the circuit was 1986. The 85-86 season was my first year on the circuit. At that time, I was working a part-time job. I was mowing lawns. I was washing cars. I was, working in an assembly line at a factory to make money. And I saved up $3,000 in order to pay my Bassmaster entry fees for a year. I was living in I was 22 years old. I was still living in my parents' house. I didn't have any expenses out there. I had what was called a demo boat from Ranger. Ranger let me have a boat for a year at no charge, and I had to sell it at the end of the year and pay him back for it. So I went into the 1985-86 Bassmaster season with $3,000 to bankroll and nothing but passion and desire. And the first year I was fortunate enough, I made a check in 6 out of the 7 tournaments that kept me going, and I qualified for the Bassmaster Classic my rookie year. I was an exception, guys. Most people don't do that. Most people don't qualify for the Classic their rookie year out there, and that jump started my career. Fast forward that to 2023. If I was the same 22, 23-year-old Randy Blockett out there, if I had $3,000 in the bank right now, I couldn't even fish the BFL, let alone the Bassmaster circuit out there. People like myself, and there's a lot of people out there that have the dream and the desire and the passion to be a professional angler, that dream has been taken away from them by the increase of costs in the sport. entry fees, the cost of boats and motors, everything that goes along with it. It's absolutely freaking ridiculous now that the average cost of a bass boat is over $100,000. That's ridiculous. That's like buying it. That's like people that can go out and afford to buy a damn Lamborghini. Is that where we want to be in the sport? So the first thing that we have got to address in the sport, unless we truly want to make this into an elitist sport, and as an elitist sport, it is unsustainable. There's not that many people out there that love to bass fish that have loaded mom and dads, that they don't exist out there. I mean, right now there's a bunch of them because it seems like every college and high school angler out there has got a nicer boat than most people do when they're 50 years old. So there's people out there that have that kind of discretionary income, but as a long-term sustainable model, that is unsustainable. If you're, some, 18-year-old inner city kid that is a basketball phenom, you don't have to have $100,000 to be a professional basketball player to compete in it, or NFL or baseball. Fishing is the only sport out there that you have to pay to play. And that is a result of quite a few different things. We've created that monster ourselves there. So the first thing that we have to do to get over that this is only one issue we're talking about, the money part of it. The first thing we have to do is we have to reduce the cost of competing in those tournaments. One of the easiest ways to do it right off the bat to make it more affordable, let's put a rule. If Bassmaster came out with a rule, in 2025, they say, okay, boats are going to be limited to 17 feet in length with a maximum horsepower of 50 horsepower, something like that. You're allowed one electronic unit up front, you're allowed one electronic unit on the bow, and that's what you have to fish out of. Right there, you reduce the cost of your equipment by 75%. Instead of paying $100,000, $110,000 for a bass boat today, guys are going to be able to get into a bass boat with a 50 horse and a 17-foot boat on there for probably under $10,000. Then you have helped level the playing field. It doesn't become an elitist sport. You don't discriminate against the single family parents where you got an 18-year-old kid that's being raised by his single mom that can't afford a $100,000 boat, but they can afford something like that. So by doing that and making that the baseline, you've taken a big chunk of that financial elitism out of it right there. The next thing with it, guys, is we have got to get rid of these $5,000 entry fees for tournaments and the crap payouts, because what you have right now is it would be more profitable for the fishermen to get 200 guys together and everybody throw in $5,000 and have a big jackpot tournament. Because right now, none of these tournaments are even paying out 100%. I mean, we're fishing for 75, 80% of our own entry fee money in most of these tournaments. And if tournament organizations if they do not have the ability to generate sponsor income that allows them to function and operate their business without having to take it away from the angler's entry fees, somebody's not doing their job out there. If somebody cannot market their business enough and maintain the day-to-day operating expenses of an organization without having to suck it out of the tournament anglers, I'd be firing those people. Somebody is not doing their job very good. So first thing we have to do, guys, the dark cloud, is we got to get this money cloud out of our head. We did not have it before. Guys, back when I started out in the sport in the 80s and 90s, I mean, it's all relative. I understand that. It's all relative to the cost of living and everything, but we didn't have those issues out there. Next thing, guys, out there is the challenges we have environmentally out there. And most people, when I say this, when I talk about environmental challenges in the sport of fishing, it goes in one ear and out the other. They don't care about it. They're apathetic about it. They think it's a hoax. They think you're exaggerating. They're just oblivious and have their heads stuck in the sand about it. Now, Ray Scott and Bassmaster back in the 70s, they understood this, and they were some of the leaders in calling out polluters, conservation efforts, filing lawsuits against polluters, all that type of stuff. We've sort of just dropped that. People don't do that anymore. I don't know why that was such a big deal in the 70s, and now it just fell by the wayside. But guys, if you fish and if you hunt, you have a vested interest in making sure that our environment is the cleanest it's ever been and the most sustainable it's ever been, and will be that way moving forward. Because if you're not fully vested into being concerned about environmental interests, and if you're not fully invested in voting for political candidates that make legislation that affect those environmental topics out there, voting for politicians that push for stronger environmental legislations, you are undermining your very playing field. If you hunt, if you fish, and you don't do that, you are taking you're doing nothing but hurting yourself for the long term. And I see this a big problem right now out there. It's a big problem, and it's a problem that doesn't get talked about because people are bored by it. They don't want to hear about it. They're apathetic about it. When I talk about point source pollution, or if I talk about mercury contamination, or if I talk about sulfur dioxide contamination, or if I talk about billions of tons of CO2 put in the atmosphere, it's one ear and out the other, and it's like, okay, tell me where I can, how I can adjust my life scope better. That's the apathy that we have in the sport that's creating this storm cloud over us, because this is not going to get any better on its own. It's like if we don't put this in the forefront, along with the whole money part of it, it's just a matter of time before everything starts going down the tube with it. It doesn't take a stretch of the imagination to see that, especially since we continue to have an exploding number of anglers. We have an exploding number of developers around these lakes that are developing the lakes and putting more point source solution into the lakes. It seems like we continue electing politicians that undermine environmental legislations and regulations to safeguard our air and water. It's not looking good in that terms out there. So we have got to become aware of that. The best thing that we can do as far as to ensure the sustainability of our fisheries for the long term is to enact and put people in positions of power that push through and vote for legislation that strengthens our environmental regulations out there. Would you rather have a 5% more tax break, or would you rather have a pristine, vibrant body of water or hunting grounds where you could go out and, have a great hunting and fishing experience? You have to make that decision, on that. It's pretty easy to do. So, it all goes back again, guys, to it's like one of the biggest, again, the storm clouds in the sport is just we're loving this thing to death, and we're loving our sport to death. And by doing that, we ignore the challenges that come with that increased participation levels out there. And until we start acknowledging that in terms of the rules we set in place, whether it be with electronic technology or the number of tournaments that we have, or starting to do things that are responsible for the sport, like not having tournaments on top of the prime spawning areas, not having any tournaments during the warm weather months where there's a lot of fish killed, improving, the situation where we don't have any more weigh-ins, where we haul these fish around to live wells, where we can weigh them on the water and turn them back immediately. Until we start getting serious about our conservation efforts, guys, it is not looking that good. And you can stick your head in the sand, and you can be one of those guys that says, Randy is nothing but a negative Nelly. Nothing's that bad. Everything's okay. The sport's doing great. If you want to be one of those guys that stick your head in the sand, and 50 years from now, we're going to be looked back at some of the biggest villains that ever existed in the bass fishing world because we had the ability to change and improve our fisheries, and we chose not to. Is that where we want to be at? So I just want to bring some of that stuff to light, guys. That's just a few of them at the top of my head. There's still a bunch more out there that we can talk about that need to be taken care of. But the main thing, guys, is there's two things that are causing these clouds over us that I'm talking about here. One is the money aspect of it, and two is the environmental aspect of it. And I've talked extensively about the correlation between money and forward-facing sonar in the tournaments. I've talked extensively about doing things to pass legislation to make sure our waters are clean and our air is clean out there. And it just goes in deaf ears for the most part. It goes into deaf ears in the people that have the ability to make those changes. There's a lot of people out there that agree with me, In this video here, there's going to be 80% of the people that say right on, Randy, and there's going to be 20% of the people out there, oh, you're just bitching and moaning again, Randy, just stop your whining, blah, blah, blah. I've heard it all out there. So you got to really decide what side of the fence you want to be on this. I mean, do you want to be on the right side of the fence where, you know, we do the right thing and we're given the ability and we're given the option to do the right thing and we take that option and do the right thing? Or do you want to be made aware of the challenges that we have, stick your head in the sand and don't do the right thing because you're more concerned about me, what's here for me now, how's this going to benefit me, how's this live scope going to help me catch more fish right now? And that's the state of the mentality of a lot of the anglers I see in this country out here right now. So I think a lot of it is just changing our perception and the way that we think. We have got to have a paradigm shift in the sport, guys. We have got to have a paradigm shift where our focus is on future generations, what we're going to leave to them. We have to have a paradigm shift to make this bass fishing where it's not an elitist sport and where it's inclusive to the low-income anglers out there. Guys, some 17, 18-year-old kid that doesn't have any money has just as much right to live their dream and being a professional angler as some kid that's 18 years old and they got a mega wealthy family that can afford to put them in a brand new bass boat with 6 different electronic units out there. It's an insult to the sport to have that type of financial disparity that we have now. And that financial disparity, guys, make no mistake about it, it can be eliminated by the tournament organizations. You put equipment limitations on these tournaments where you don't have that financial disparity, that goes a long way into stopping that. But right now, it goes back to money again, goes back to these companies out there can't make their profit margins if they have 17-foot boats and 50 horsepower motors in it, you know, and you know that there's nothing that needs to be said about that. It's clear as day what's the priority here. So you got to make some hard decisions out there. We really do. And like I said, I'm coming from somebody, guys, I've been in the sport longer than 99% of the people watching these videos. I love the sport. I'm not sitting here trying to dog it because I don't like it. I love it. I got a vested interest in it succeeding, and I want to see it succeed. And right now, we're on a path of unsustainability, and you can deny it or you can accept it, one of the two. But one of the things about it, just because you deny that reality does not mean that it's not true, because it's like science. Science is true whether you decide to believe it or not. You know, you can ignore fact, but that doesn't take away from things that are fact, which this is. So anyway, shoot me some comments, guys. I'd really curious to hear what you guys think about it. We'll talk later.